Jesus plus nothing. 100% natural, no additives. Andrew Farley is celebrating your freedom in Christ. Call in and ask your questions at 877-655-6755. That's toll free at 877-655-6755. Via satellite from Texas, it's The Grace Message with Dr. Andrew Farley.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Grace Message. I'm Andrew Farley. So glad you're joining us tonight. That number, 877-655-6755. Right now, we've got wide open lines, plenty of room for you to get in with your question tonight. Maybe you've got a question about a scripture passage. Maybe you heard something in church this past weekend. You're not sure about it. You're still scratching your head wondering about it. Then, hey, let's make it a conversation together right now. 877-655-6755. The last couple of nights were pre-recorded as I was on travel, but now we are live once again taking your calls. Be sure to call in with your concern tonight. Maybe you've got a personal problem going on in your life right now, in your marriage, with your kids, in your church. You're looking for that grace message perspective. Well, that's exactly why we're here for you, toll-free across the United States and Canada right now. 4 open lines, lots of room. You'll be sure to get in, 877-655-6755. And if you're a first-time caller tonight, you got to know we love it. We love to hear from our first-time callers. We'd love to hear from you. If you're a veteran listener, maybe you've called in the past, but it's been a while. You got something brand new on your heart tonight. By all means, join us as well. Wide open lines. It's a great night. If you're live streaming with us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, you're wanting to be a part of tonight's interaction, well, we invite you to call right now with your question. One more time, I'll give you that number. 4 open lines. Again, a rare opportunity to get in right away. 877-655-6755. Well, I've been teaching through the book of Romans lately, and I got to tell you, Romans chapter 3, 4, and 5 are just so powerful. I mean, I love Romans 6. Don't get me wrong. I'll be talking about that when we get there, but Romans 3, 4, and 5 are so incredible because there's a lot revealed. I just look at Romans 3 and I think, well, look at what Paul is saying. He says, whatever the law says, it speaks to those who are under the law. So first, there's an audience, a particular audience for the law. And who is that audience? People that are under it. That means that some people are under it, some people aren't under it. Some people are subject to it, other people are free from it. Whatever the law says, it speaks to those who are under the law, so that every mouth may be closed and all the world may become accountable to God. That shows you 2 things. First, there's a unique audience for the law. Second, what does the law say to them? It silences them, that every mouth may be closed. Shut up. That's what the law's saying. Shut up. But now in my household, growing up, my mom would not have it. She wouldn't let me talk that way. But you know, that's exactly what the law is saying to humanity. You don't have what it takes. You can't live up to the standard. You can't meet the benchmark. You can't live under the law and actually live to tell about it, because the law kills. And so Paul is laying out this truth about the law. He's saying this law is for a certain group of people. Who is that? Well, it's people that are under it. And as a Christian, do we not remember the message? I mean, hello, the message is you're dead to the law, free from the law, not under the law. Christ is the end of the law for all those who believe. Now, if you don't believe me on that, all we got to do is read the next verse. I mean, look at this. It says, but now, apart from the law, the righteousness of God has been manifested. What does that tell you? It's happening apart from the law, not under the law, but apart from it. Now, there's a very popular teaching today that you may be dead to the ceremonial law. You don't need the sacrificial system because, Jesus is your sacrifice, but you still need the Ten Commandments. You still need a part of the law. Is that what Paul is saying? You need a part of the law? No. He's not saying you need a part of the law. He's saying apart from the law. Apart from the law, the righteousness of God has been manifested. So we are not right with God through our obedience. We're not right with God through our good works. We're not right with God through our law keeping. Apart from the law, righteousness has been revealed. Where then is bragging? It is excluded. There's no way to brag. I mean, what are you going to brag about? The only thing to brag about is how big and awesome your salvation is. You can't brag about how great your law keeping is, but you can only brag about how great your Savior is. And so he says, we maintain that a man is justified by faith apart from the works of the law. Apart from the works of the law. What does that tell you? Again, it's like there's two systems. There's an achieving system and a receiving system. There's a trying system and a trusting system. And these two systems have been in existence for a really long time. Abraham was made right not through trying, but through trusting. David was made right not through trying, but through trusting. And likewise, you and I today, it's all about receiving, not achieving. These two systems have been in place, law and grace, the promise given to Abraham for thousands of years. These two systems have been in place for us to make a decision. Do you really believe that you're getting progressively right with God as you have your quiet time, as you attend your church building for an hour a week on Sunday, as you read the Bible, logging time in a book? Do we really believe that we are progressively getting right with God, or are we going to buy into this receiving system? It's not about achieving. It's about receiving. It's not about trying. It's about trusting. And if you think I'm talking about getting saved, well, that's only the beginning. I'm not talking about salvation alone. I'm talking about, when do you give yourself permission to feel right with God? When do you give yourself permission to feel clean and close to God? Is it only when you've done your part? Because if so, that is still justification by works. Now, I'm not saying that we're not saved. We can be saved and confused. We can be saved and legalistic. We can be saved and yet off base because we get our heads filled with a bunch of error, and next thing you know, we're thanking Jesus that we're saved by grace, but we're trying really hard every day to get on God's good side. Well, the great news is you're already on his good side. You're at his right hand. You're seated in heavenly places right next to God. You're clean, you're close, you're forgiven, you're righteous, you're holy, you're blameless. Wow. The wow is right now. We don't have to wait for heaven. The gospel is powerful. This message is so incredible. The book of Romans is bragging on Jesus. And I love it. And throughout the next week or two, we'll mention Romans here and there. We're going to get back to Romans because really it's so powerful. If I were stranded on a deserted island, I got to have the book of Romans and the book of Hebrews. I mean, those two, are you kidding me? Those two are pillars in the New Testament. So powerful. All right, well, we're going to go out now, and we're going to talk with Mike in Houston. Hey, Mike, what do you got for us?
Hey, Andrew. Thanks for taking my call.
Yeah.
I have read the Bible, and I cannot put my finger on where I read it. And I'm going to paraphrase what I think I read. But basically, what my question is regarding is, I thought that in the Bible it says churches should do an accounting to their members for how money is spent to prevent obvious problems, rumors, and such. Am I wrong about that? Doesn't the Bible make a provision or not a command, but and
Yeah.
then stronger than the suggestion? But doesn't God say that
Mhm.
monies that are given to Him should be accounted for?
Okay.
And I think you get the gist of my question.
I do. Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about that. You've got passages about accounting. I mean, clearly, you go back to the Old Testament. There's an accounting that was made. You think of 2 Kings chapter 12, where there was no accounting required from the men into whose hands they gave the money to pay those who did the work. They dealt with them faithfully. You've got some Old Testament passages about accounting. The New Testament philosophy on giving is give freely from the heart, not under pressure. But as far as a passage in the New Testament about church accounting, you're not going to find that exactly. You certainly find that the apostles used money responsibly. I mean, they laid belongings at the apostles' feet and they were distributed according to the needs. It was, I mean, quite candidly, 2,000 years ago, it was almost like living on a commune. They were sharing everything communally, and that's the way it was in the early church. It was small. It was a small community. Everybody knew each other. And, they were hated. They were persecuted. They were alone in this. They were rejecting mom and dad's religion, and they were huddling up and supporting each other. And so there was a trust factor, and the apostles were running things. But as far as your question in general, I mean, to me, it's just a no brainer that you see in the New Testament that leaders are to lead with wisdom and gentleness as those who will give an account for their leadership. That doesn't mean that God is going to, beat them over the head in heaven because they chose to be leaders, but it means that leaders are going to have to answer. When it says that leaders will be judged more harshly, that means in the eyes of the public. That means in the eyes of the congregation. So that's just natural. It's a fact. It's not even a mandate. It's just a fact that, look, around the world, church leaders are in the spotlight and they're called into question quite often, and it's perfectly natural for them to give an account of how funds are being used. I mean, that's pretty normal in any healthy nonprofit. There's going to be an annual report, an annual meeting. There's going to be an audit of some kind. I mean, I've been part of a church for 2 decades. We always have an annual meeting, an annual report, an annual voting to pass a budget and report on the previous year and have an external auditor and those kinds of things just to, make sure that everybody knows that we're being extra careful. And so I would hope that would be happening in the church you're thinking of, or the ministry organization that you're imagining. So you're not going to find chapter and verse about accounting, but you are going to find the qualifications for a good leader under the new covenant in the New Testament. Qualifications for healthy leadership. You see Paul sharing that with the young pastor Timothy. Hey, Tim, when you go out and pick leaders, here's what you need to be looking for. And It's pretty clear that they're not swindlers, it says, and that they're not known for mismanaging things, and that they manage their own household, and there's a healthy criteria. So that tells you something. And then the motive for giving is to give freely from the heart. And then it says that leaders are judged more harshly by other people. So all of that, you put that together, and I'm just saying it's a no-brainer that you should be able to sit down and have a conversation with a church leader and find out the facts. Here we are. I mean, look, we're in the United States of America. And Mike, you're calling from Houston, Texas. So you're in North America, you're in the good old USA, and you're talking about some church, I would imagine, some ministry that's a registered nonprofit, and that means that the records should be accessible. So absolutely. I think it's a definitive yes that it's healthy to know what's happening, and it's healthy to be able to ask your local church leader, "Hey, can you tell me where does my donation go? And how are you using the funds? And this building campaign that we've got, what can you tell me about it? And where do we stand? And how's that going to be used for the building?" And I mean, you should be free to ask any of those questions. Those are healthy questions, especially when you have a concern. There needs to be a liberty there. So thanks for your question, Mike. I hope that encourages you. Call us back anytime. Great to hear from you. All right, well, let's go now to Susan in Arkansas. Hey, Susan.
Hi. My question, my precious grown daughter who loves Jesus and wants to be a good servant, but believes that the passages in the Bible that pertain to homosexuality are misinterpreted, that's her word, and they are all talking about pedophilia.
Right, right. Okay. Yeah, that's it's just not true, and that can be proven in my view, in my estimation. It's a slam dunk. It's again a no-brainer because you look at the verbiage of Paul. Now, I studied linguistics. I have a PhD in linguistics. I love language. I love looking at how to break down a sentence and how a person communicates and what they're trying to say. And I've heard the arguments that your daughter is referring to, and at first they can sound really convincing. The problem is they're based on a single word. I mean, they're literally based on the definition of one word. And that's not good enough when you really examine Romans chapter 1. Let's take this as the classic example. It says this, that God gave them over in the lusts of their heart to impurity. It says their bodies would be dishonored among them. And then it says God gave them over to degrading passions. It says, for the women exchanged the natural function for that which is unnatural. All right, so we're supposed to imagine so far that the natural is having sexual relations with an adult, and then the unnatural is pedophilia. I mean, that's the theory that people are going to push. Okay, well, let's keep reading. And in the same way, all right, remember that phrase. And in the same way, also, the men abandoned the natural function of the woman. All right, ding, ding, now we've got it. What is the natural function? He's saying the natural function of the woman. That tells you that the natural function is the opposite sex. And it goes on and it says, and burned in their desire toward one another. So what was happening? They were exchanging the natural function of the opposite sex, and they were burning in their desire toward the same sex. Men with men, committing indecent acts and receiving in their own persons the due penalty of their error. So what's happening here is it's a clear-cut issue, but they're trying to make it cloudy or questionable by talking about the definition of a word. And I'm sorry, but it's not about the word. It's about the phrase, it's about the sentence, and it's about the paragraph, and it's about Paul repeating himself twice here. I mean, first he says, God gave them over in the lusts of their hearts to impurity, so that their bodies would be dishonored. So whatever they're doing is impure and dishonoring. Second, he tells us what they're doing. Verse 26, God gave them over to degrading passions. So now we've learned that it's impure, it's dishonoring, and it's degrading. Now, what is it? It says, their women exchanged the natural function for that which is unnatural. And in the same way, the men abandoned the natural function of the woman. So if that phrase of the woman were not there, it could be more difficult, more ambiguous, more challenging. But do you notice that phrase is there? And it says, in the same way, the men abandoned the natural function of the woman. So what did God naturally design? He naturally designed men with women and women with men. And it says they gave that up and they burned in their desire toward one another. Now in the original language, toward one another means toward one another. And abandon the natural means abandon the natural. And men with men means men with men. It doesn't mean men with boys. And so that's where this whole thing breaks down. There are people that are trying to reinterpret Paul for their own agenda. And it just doesn't stack up to scrutiny. So it's not about the definition of some word, the third, fourth, fifth definition of this word could mean this and therefore it's pedophilia. No. It's not about the word level. We've got words and phrases and sentences and an entire paragraph here where Paul not only states what he's saying with words, but he explains in depth exactly what was happening. So I hope that brings some clarity to you, my friend. Appreciate your call tonight, Susan. Call us back anytime. All right, well, let's go now to New Jersey, and we'll talk with Darlene. Hey, Darlene, what do you got for us?
Hi there. Thank you for taking my call.
Yes.
And it sounds like a very simple question, but when it says you're to meditate on the word day and night, what exactly does meditate look like? I mean, I know I read the Bible and try to cross-reference where is that coming from, or but what does it mean by to meditate?
Yes. All right. Well, what it means is to set your mind. It doesn't mean you close your eyes and you start humming or you put yourself in the yoga position or anything like that. Eastern meditation has maybe warped what the scripture's actually talking about. Other ways to reference the same idea. The New Testament says, set your mind on things above. So we study to show ourselves approved. Look at the gospel. It's saying you're approved, you're holy, you're righteous, you're acceptable. But planet Earth has another message for us. So what do? We reprogram. We set our minds on the truth that's going to set us free. We fix our eyes on Jesus. We let Him renew our minds.
For more information on the broadcast ministry of Dr. Andrew Farley, please visit andrewfarley.org. That's andrewfarley.org. Join us next time as we invite you to celebrate the grace message with Dr. Andrew Farley. This program is sponsored by your generous financial support.